I am so excited for you to see this. Today we're making one of the most luxurious and also one of the most advanced soap making recipes out there, the Himalayan salt bar. Now, before we start, I want to say that this is not a regular soap making recipe, meaning that you cannot take your regular soap recipe and just add salt and expect to get something great. If you do that, you will probably get something that is very crumbly and very hard to cut afterwards. Salt bars require a completely different formula and a completely different process. I'm telling you guys, you will be mind blown after this. This video is for you who want to make a soap that is cleansing, creamy and exfoliating. So salt adds exfoliating properties to your soap. If you have very sensitive skin or very dry skin, this recipe might not be the right for you. I have other recipes that you can watch, other videos where I make sensitive soap bars, and perhaps those might be better for you. Let's start. So today I'm gonna show you how to make a Himalayan salt bar with 50% coconut oil concentration. You heard me right, 50%. I know that I usually add 25 to 30% and I say don't go above that because you will start getting very dry skin, it will start being very stripping and remove all the fats from your skin. But as I said, today we're making a completely different soap recipe that is like no other. Then we're going to talk about the 12% superfat trick. Usually we use 5% superfat, this time we use 12%. Then we're going to talk about why the soap needs only 6 hours of insulation. Yep, you heard me right. Like usually we insulate for 24 to 48 hours. Not this time. This time we insulate for 6 hours only. Because this soap hardens so fast that if you try to cut it after 24 hours, it will be impossible and you will end up getting a very crumbly soap that basically breaks. Before we start, if you're completely new to soap making and would like to get a beginner's recipe on soap making, a balanced soap bar that is both cleansing and creamy, I have a free PDF that includes the whole procedure from start to finish, explaining the materials, why we use coconut oil, why we use shea butter, why we use olive oil and castor oil, and it also includes an amazing essential oil blend with patchouli essential oil, ylang ylang and pine needle that smells amazing, and it's made that way so that it's long lasting and it doesn't fade after 3 months. If you want this recipe, comment soap and I will send it to you as soon as I see your comment. So why do we add salt? So what salt does is that it makes your bar very hard, which means it also makes your bar very long lasting. So number one is that you add a lot of hardness to your soap. Number two is that adding salt reduces the lather of oils. So that's why we need to increase coconut oil to 50%, because if you leave it at 20 or 25%, your soap will not lather at all. Basically, the salt reduces your lather completely. And then the third thing you should know about salt is that it makes your soap very brittle. That's why we need to cut it very early when it's still kind of soft and you can still use your cutter to cut it. Otherwise, it will just break into pieces and become very brittle. And trust me, I've been there. I've made this soap dozens of times and I felt, especially in the start. And that's why I'm making this recipe today, because I don't want the same for you. I want you to avoid all these problems and go straight into making an amazing salt bar. A regular soap bar has 20 to 30% coconut oil and 5% superfat. A Himalayan salt bar has 50% coconut oil and 12% superfat. At the same time, a regular soap bar here has around 35% lye concentration, which means when you make your lye solution, 35% is lye and the other 65% is water. Here we are using 20% lye concentration. 20% of the solution is lye and 80% is water. And we do that because we're lowering the concentration so that we don't hit trace acceleration. As I've said in my previous video, one of the things that leads to trace acceleration is your ingredients. So if you add salt and if you also have a high concentration of coconut oil, you risk of getting solidification, you risk of getting trace acceleration, and your soap solidifies so fast that you're not able to pour it into the mold. In order to counteract that and in order to solve this problem, we're dropping the lye concentration to 20%. So we're making 1,000 grams of oils, and then 10% of that, so 100 grams, will be Himalayan salt. At the end of the video, I will show you how to calculate this recipe using soapcalc.net with the exact procedure, the exact amounts, everything you need to know to make your own recipes. As always, before we start, you're a beginner soap maker, or even like you have been making soap for a while, and you're going to different blogs, to different YouTube videos, and you see different recipes all the time. People are using different oils, different percentages, and you're like, why this person is using that? Why this person is using that? So let's talk about formulation before we start. And in this recipe, we're using coconut oil. Why coconut oil? Coconut oil in soap is what adds bubbles and cleansiness. So coconut oil contains lauric acid and myristic acid. When it reacts with sodium hydroxide, it produces sodium laurate and sodium myristate. And those substances add a lot of bubbles to your soap. So I want you to remember, coconut oil equals bubbles. Then we're also adding olive oil. Olive oil is basically high in oleic acid and linoleic acid, and it's what adds a lot of conditioning properties to your soap. People who have very sensitive skin, usually they want to have a soap that is very high in olive oil and low in coconut oil. So they can make a soap that is 100% olive oil, like the Castille soap, or make a soap that has, let's say, 8% or 90% olive oil and only 10% coconut oil, so that it's slightly cleansing but not too cleansing that dries out the skin. Then we have other ingredients like shea butter and cocoa butter. Shea and cocoa butter are high in stearic and palmitic acid, and it's basically what adds a lot of creaminess to your lather. So shea butter equals creaminess. And then we have castor oil. Castor oil is an amazing ingredient. A little goes a long way. You don't need a lot, you only need like 6%. And what it does is that it contains ricinoleic acid. And ricinoleic acid is what adds a lot of thickness to your lather. If you try to separate your oils in 4 categories: conditioning, cleansiness, creaminess, and thickness, you will realize that a lot of different oils you see out there fall in these 4 categories. Conditioning, olive oil, rapeseed oil, sunflower oil, avocado oil, they are all similar. They all give conditioning properties. Cleansiness, you have coconut oil, babasu oil, a bit of palm oil as well. They all do kind of the same thing. Then creaminess, you have shea butter, cocoa butter. You can replace one for another. And then thickness is kind of a standalone. This is mainly castor oil that does what it does. Categorizing your oil into those 4 parts can help you actually make the choices much easier and understand formulation much easier. And understanding the properties of your oil will help you tweak the recipes, because the aim is not for you to only know how to copy recipes, but the aim is for you to know how to design, to learn how to design your own recipes based on your own goals. Do you have dry skin? Minimize coconut oil. Do you want something super cleansing for the dishes, for example, to clean the dishes? Maximize coconut oil. And then you can tweak the ratios yourself to make the soap that you imagine. I am super excited for this. So before we start, we need to talk about lye. What is lye? Lye is sodium hydroxide, and it's basically what converts oils into soap. So the typical saponification reaction is that you have oils like coconut oil, olive oil, and so on, plus lye, otherwise known as sodium hydroxide, equals soap and glycerin. Is there any lye left in your soap by the end? No. If you do everything correctly, there shouldn't be any lye left. It's just an intermediate to complete the saponification reaction. So back in the days, instead of using sodium hydroxide or potassium hydroxide, they used to mix wood ash with water, They used to filter it down, and then they used to get a concentrated solution of potassium hydroxide, because wood ash contains potassium hydroxide. That's how they made soap for thousands of years, until recent chemistry evolved and we managed to get pure sodium hydroxide, 100% pure, which is amazing because it doesn't have any impurities and it makes your life easier when it comes to calculating how much oil you need to add, because before it was more of a trial and error. Let's talk about lye safety. When you are handling lye, always wear protective gear, gloves, goggles, and so on. The non-negotiable rule with lye is that you always add your lye in the water, never the other way around. The lye solution is a highly exothermic reaction, so the moment you add your lye in the water, there is a lot of heat being produced. So if you add water into the lye, you create a very concentrated solution that can be very dangerous. So always add the lye in the water. If you want to be totally safe, you can also freeze the water to avoid generating any fumes. So you add your lye in the water and then you mix slowly, and you make sure you're in a well-ventilated area so that you don't breathe any of the fumes. I will show you how to actually calculate the recipe using soap calc. So let's go ahead and add our lye slowly into the water. And now I'm gonna mix, and I'm actually gonna take it outside to avoid breathing any fumes. So here I have some shea butter and coconut oil, and we're gonna melt these, our hard oils, over a double boiler. So let's go ahead and do that. Our coconut oil and our shea butter are melted. Let's add our liquid oils, which is olive oil and castor oil. Always checking what I'm adding, because once I confused olive oil with castor oil. And now let's add the castor oil. And now we're gonna let both our oils and lye solution cool down. We want to mix them when they're around 28 to 30 degrees Celsius, because when we mix at low temperatures, we have better control over our soap butter altogether. While we wait, if you're interested in this recipe and many different recipes from shampoo bars, conditioner bars, creams, body soap, hand soap, dish soap, face soap, etc., I have an ebook that contains all of them. Plus, it contains the procedure to make you not only know how to copy recipes, but also how to learn to design your own recipes and understand formulation. So this is the ebook that will take you from complete beginner, from overwhelmed beginner, to a confident soap maker and formulator. If you're interested, you can click the link in my bio, and I would love to hear your feedback on it. So now we're waiting for our oils and lye solution to cool down. Why don't we go and make our essential oil blend, my favorite thing? And for this recipe, you know what? I love vetiver. Vetiver essential oil is a base, meaning that is an essential oil of high molecular weight. It evaporates very, very slowly, and it makes everything else long lasting. Now, I want for this recipe vetiver essential oil to be quite prominent, so I will add a bit more than usual. And usually for 1,000 grams of oils, I go anywhere between 30 to 50 grams of essential oils. Now, if you're allergic or if you have sensitivity to any essential oils or fragrance oils, 50 grams is on the higher side. So you might want to lower that down. But for me, I'm gonna go ahead and add a total essential oil blend concentration of around 50 grams. So I'm gonna start with vetiver. Wow, it smells amazing. And for that, I'm adding 9 grams. So we added 9 grams of vetiver, and now we're gonna go ahead and add patchouli essential oil. Now, patchouli essential oil is also an oil that is very, very, very long lasting, and it actually complements vetiver beautifully. So we're gonna go ahead and add another 10 grams of patchouli essential oil. Then the rest, we're gonna go ahead and add rosemary. That will blend beautifully with both patchouli and vetiver. So we're gonna go ahead and add 15 grams. And now for the rest, I'm gonna go ahead and add Lychea cubeba, which is an amazing citrusy essential oil. Wow, this smells amazing. Our oils and lye solution are almost at low similar temperature, and here comes the most exciting part. It's the part where we're gonna mix our oils and lye solution together to create a beautiful emulsification. Then we're gonna add our Himalayan salt. At the end, we're gonna add our beautiful essential oil blend. We're going to pour it into the mold, and this is perhaps a very important step because we're not going to insulate that soap. No, don't insulate it. Salt will overheat the soap anyway. So if you insulate it, it will most probably crack. So as I said, this is a completely different soap recipe, a different process. So we won't insulate anything this time. And as you will see, after 5.5, 6 hours, we will have to go and cut the soap. Let's go ahead and start for the most exciting part of this recipe, mixing and pouring. Let's go ahead and mix our oils and lye solution. I'm adding the water on the stick blender to avoid any turbulence that will lead to air bubbles. And now it's time to add our Himalayan salt and our essential oil blend. So let's go ahead and pour into the mold. This is a homemade mold, by the way. You can see our trace is perfect, so no trace acceleration, which is quite convenient. And now I'm going to shake the mold slightly and tap it to remove trapped air bubbles. And now we're gonna let it sit like that, no insulation needed, and I will see you guys in 5 to 6 hours where we're gonna mold it and cut it. See you soon. Welcome back. 5.5 hours have gone by and the soap looks amazing and it smells fantastic. So now let's go ahead and see if we can remove it from the mold easily, cut it and also stamp it. So stamping is going to be quite different than other soaps because, as you will see, if you press it too much you will completely break the soap and it will become crumble. So you really have to put a bit of pressure, and if we try to stamp it in 1 or 2 hours from now, it will be impossible. It will be rock hard. So you have to find this sweet spot during this timing, during the insulation timing, where you are able to actually stamp it. Let's go ahead. So let's go ahead and cut it. Ah, it's beautiful. Look at that. It's phenomenal. Now it's been cut beautifully. Wow. There is something unique about the soap, the whole process, how you make it, the fact that you use 12% superfat and 20% lye concentration, the fact that you use 50% coconut oil. All of this is basically completely different than your traditional soap recipes, coupled with the essential oil blend of patchouli, vetiver and Lychea cubeba. This soap is just amazing. Now let's talk about stamping, and stamping here is also very unique. First of all, as always, use a plastic film between your metal stamp and your soap, otherwise the metal ions might actually accelerate dreaded orange spots, especially if you have a high concentration of olive oil. So probably here the risk is low, but in any case you get a better stamp when you use a plastic film in between. So if I press a lot, I will destroy the whole soap. So I really have to press just a bit to create the stamp and the logo I want. It's very, very, very delicate. Look at that. I'm barely touching it right now. Wow. I have to say, I'm very happy with the result. Look at this. And bear in mind, the next 4 days, this soap will actually change color because of the Himalayan salt. Guys, it's been an amazing day, an amazing journey making this Himalayan salt soap. It turned out to be fantastic. You can see it here. I cut it after 5.5 hours and I stamped it after 5.5 hours. Like, the uniqueness of this soap is just amazing. Right now you see this soap, it looks quite white. It will change color through time, so after a few days it will be slightly different in color, and I'm really looking forward to show it to you guys. So with that being said, thank you so much for staying all the way to the end. I hope you really enjoyed this recipe, and I hope you make it and send me your photos, your results. I want to see how it looks like. And right now I'm going to show you the soapcalc.net recipe, how to calculate it on your own and how to make any adjustments you want. So as always, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Welcome to the soapcalc.net tutorial. So let's go click a recipe calculator, and then you will see it says type of lye. So which one do you choose? Because we're making solid soap, you're choosing sodium hydroxide. If we were to make liquid soap, you would choose potassium hydroxide. For grams, I made 1,000 grams. This is 1 kilo of oils. Lye concentration, it was 20%. Superfat was up to 12%, and fragrance was at 50 grams per kilo of oils. Then let's go add our oil. So basically you go here, you add your coconut oil, then you add the rest, which was olive oil, here shea butter and castor oil. So we add 50% coconut oil, 34% olive oil for conditioning, then 10% shea butter for creaminess, and 6% castor oil for thickness. We click calculate recipe, view or print recipe, and here you get this file, and it's very, very helpful because it tells you how much water you have to add. You have to add 556 grams of water. Then you add 139 grams of lye in the water. Then you have the quantities of your oil. So 500 grams of coconut oil, 340 grams of olive oil, 100 grams of shea butter, and 60 grams of castor oil. And then it also gives you a prediction of how your soap will look like. So it tells you the hardness, the typical range is 29 to 54. Your soap is at 50. So we have a quite hard soap. Cleansing, the typical range is 12 to 22. Our soap is 34. But of course, here we are also adding 10% Himalayan salt. So you can write it here. And that accounts to basically 100 grams Himalayan salt for this recipe. So and then Himalayan salt actually changes some of these properties we see here, as we discussed before. Then you also get this table here. It will tell you how much lauric acid, which is mainly coconut oil, myristic acid, palmitic and stearic, and so on you have. Remember, linoleic acid, if you have a high concentration of linoleic acid that you find usually in sunflower oil, this is what will lead to dreaded orange spots, because linoleic acid is very easily oxidized. And that's why if you make a soap with a high concentration of sunflower oil, it has a higher chance of getting dreaded orange spots. So this is how you calculate your recipe in soapcalc.net. Guys, thank you so much for watching all the way to the end. I really appreciate that, and I'll see you next time.